In the heart of the Amazon, a team of weary archaeologists followed their malfunctioning GPS to a clearing where no human had stepped for centuries. The morning mist parted to reveal an impossible sight, a massive ship, its rusted hull entangled in vines and roots. Hundreds of miles from any navigable water, Dr. Marcus Hale touched the cold metal, disbelief etching lines in his weathered face. Elena brushed moss from the nameplate, revealing the impossible, a vessel recorded lost at sea in 1854. As they pried open the sealed door, stale air rushed out carrying whispers of another time. Their flashlights revealed crates bearing royal insignias and maps to places that didn't exist. But nothing prepared them for what waited below deck. Glass coffins with perfectly preserved bodies, their pale skin untouched by time, eyes seemingly frozen mid-blink. What mysterious force could transport a ship into the jungle and preserve its occupants for over a century? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The university boardroom fell silent as Dr. Marcus Hale spread his weathered maps across the polished table. At 65, his once commanding presence had diminished, replaced by the quiet desperation of a man running out of chances. His fingers, spotted with age, traced the unusual electromagnetic readings detected deep in the Amazon. "These patterns don't occur naturally," he insisted, his voice steady despite the skeptical glances exchanged around him. "They match the anomalies I've documented for 30 years, Dean Richards sighed, removing his glasses. "Marcus, we've funded 3 expeditions based on your theories, each returned empty-handed." From the corner, Elena Ruiz studied her mentor with concern. At 52, she'd built her reputation as a linguist by keeping a careful distance from Hale's more controversial ideas. Yet here she was, risking her position to support him one last time. The indigenous dialects in this region contain references to objects falling from the sky, she offered. Their linguistic patterns suggest contact with something outside their experience. The expedition photographer, Tom Carter, leaned against the wall, arms crossed. His weathered face betrayed nothing, but his eyes, sharp from 20 years of military service before turning to documentation, missed nothing. "I've photographed war zones, natural disasters and unexplained phenomena across 6 continents," he said simply. "Dr. Hale's readings deserve investigation, even if just to debunk them." In his hands, he held his father's antique brass sextant, a navigational tool from another era. The instrument had guided 3 generations of Carters through uncertain territories. Tom's thumb absently polished its surface. A habit formed through years of contemplative moments. When funding finally came through, it wasn't from the university, but a private donor who wished to remain anonymous. The equipment was packed, permits secured, and the small team found themselves in Porto Velho, the last outpost of civilization before the unforgiving jungle. In their rented room, Elena watched Hale organize his notes with methodical precision. "Marcus, what aren't you telling us?" His hands paused. "What do you mean?" 3 failed expeditions, yet you're more confident than ever. "What changed?" Hale carefully closed his journal. "Sometimes persistence is enough, Elena." Tom entered, setting down supplies. "Our guide's arrived. Says we should delay. There's been unusual activity in the region. Tribal movements, animals behaving strangely. We can't delay," Hale said too quickly. "The readings are strongest now." That night, as rain hammered the tin roof, their guide, Jose, shared stories of the region. "The tribes speak of a place where time bends," he said, eyes reflecting the lamplight. "They avoid it. Say it houses spirits that are neither dead nor alive." Elena translated the local dialect, her brow furrowing. "He says there's a word they use that has no equivalent, something like the place where yesterday meets tomorrow." Tom checked his camera equipment, methodical and thorough. "I've documented enough folklore to fill a library. Sometimes there's truth beneath the myth." Morning brought relentless humidity and the start of their journey. As the small boat fought against the current, Hale clutched a worn photograph. 3 young academics, smiling beside excavated ruins. Decades younger versions of himself with colleagues long since distanced from his controversial work. "This isn't just another wild goose chase," he whispered to Elena as the jungle canopy closed around them. "This is vindication." Tom captured the moment silently through his lens, the sextant hanging from his belt, catching the dappled sunlight filtering through leaves. The ancient navigational tool seemed almost to pulse with anticipation, as if eager to guide them not just through space, but through time itself. What none of them realized was that the brass sextant, passed down through Tom's family, bore the same maker's mark as instruments aboard the vessel they were seeking, a connection that would prove to be far more than coincidental. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The jungle swallowed them on the 3rd day. What began as a manageable trek along faint trails dissolved into a constant battle against nature itself. Vines thick as a man's wrist blocked their path, requiring Tom's machete to clear even a few feet forward. The air hung heavy with moisture, turning their clothes into second skins. The coordinates should be 10 kilometers northeast, Hale insisted, squinting at his GPS device. The screen flickered, numbers jumping erratically. "Something's interfering with the signal." Eleanor paused to examine a small clay figure half buried in the soft earth. Roughly the size of her palm, it depicted a human-like form with elongated limbs, standing aboard what appeared to be a vessel. The craftsmanship was unlike any indigenous artifact she'd encountered in the region. "This doesn't match known Amazonian artistic traditions," she said, carefully wrapping it in cloth. "The proportions, the material composition, it's anomalous." Jose, their guide, grew increasingly agitated as they pressed deeper into uncharted territory. He spoke rapidly in his native tongue, pointing to strange markings carved into tree trunks. Elena translated. "He says we're entering forbidden ground." The symbols warn against proceeding. Tom photographed the markings. "These carvings look recent. The tribes avoid this area," Jose explained through Elena. "Bad dreams come to those who sleep here. Time moves wrong." That night, they made camp beneath a canopy of leaves that blocked even the stars. Jose refused to eat, watching the darkness with wary eyes. Near midnight, he disappeared, leaving only footprints leading back toward the river. "Can't blame him," Tom said, checking his watch. "My timepiece has stopped. Yours?" Both Elena and Hale confirmed their watches had frozen at different times. The morning brought a discovery that silenced their complaints about Jose's departure. A perfect circle of vegetation had withered overnight around their camp, as though something had drained the life from the plants. Their compasses spun uselessly, needles rotating without settling. "We're close," Hale whispered, his voice reverent. They pressed on, using the sun's position to maintain direction. Elena kept the clay figurine secured in her breast pocket, occasionally touching it as if for reassurance. That afternoon, they encountered a series of stone markers, weathered by centuries, yet arranged in a pattern that couldn't be natural. "These are positioned to align with stellar configurations," Hale noted, excitement overriding his exhaustion. "But not configurations from our current epoch. These correspond to star positions from approximately 12,000 years ago." Tom's camera captured strange orbs of light that appeared in his viewfinder but remained invisible to the naked eye. The temperature dropped precipitously despite the equatorial heat. Birds fell silent. On the 6th day, they reached a ridge overlooking a vast clearing that shouldn't exist in such dense jungle. Morning mist obscured what lay at its center, but the outline of something massive and distinctly unnatural was unmistakable. "That's not a natural formation," Tom breathed, raising his camera. "No," Hale agreed, his voice trembling with vindication. "It's made of metal." They descended cautiously. With each step, the clay figurine in Elena's pocket grew noticeably warmer. By the time they reached level ground, it was hot enough that she had to remove it. Wrapping it in additional layers of cloth, the mist parted momentarily. revealing their impossible discovery: the bow of an enormous ship, its hull encrusted with centuries of organic growth, yet unmistakably man-made. Iron and wood merged with vines and moss in a surreal marriage of human craft and nature's reclamation. "It's a ship," Eleanor whispered unnecessarily, the clay figurine now pulsing with heat in her hands, just like the one depicted in this artifact. The figurine began to glow with a faint blue luminescence, the same color as the strange lights dancing around the vessel's perimeter. As they approached, the tiny clay ship in the figure's hands aligned perfectly with the massive hulk before them, as if the artifact had been created as a perfect miniature guide to their destination. Morning light revealed the true scale of their discovery. The ship towered above them, its hull stretching nearly 200 feet. Impossible mathematics, a 19th-century vessel resting hundreds of miles from any navigable water. It preserved despite the jungle's relentless appetite for reclamation. HMS Perseverance, Elena read, brushing away moss from the nameplate. British Royal Navy, commissioned 1851. Tom circled the perimeter, camera documenting every inch. The hull's integrity is remarkable. It should have rotted away centuries ago. Hale approached reverently, running his palm across the weathered wood and metal. The Perseverance vanished in the Atlantic in 1854. 200 souls aboard, bound for a classified mission. The Admiralty records listed it as lost at sea with all hands. They found an access point where a massive tree had grown against the hull, its branches forming a natural stairway to the main deck. The wood beneath their feet creaked but held firm. Impossibly preserved, the air, Elena noted. It smells of salt. The deck appeared frozen in time, ropes coiled neatly. Equipment secured, as if the crew had just stepped away momentarily. No signs of violence or panic that would suggest a catastrophe. In the captain's quarters, they found a leather-bound Bible resting on the desk. The book lay open to the book of Ezekiel, with certain passages underlined in fading ink. As I looked, behold, a stormy wind came out of the north, and a great cloud with brightness around it, and fire flashing forth continually. Tom carefully turned the pages, discovering a pressed flower marking another passage. The bloom, impossibly vibrant despite its age, was of a species none of them recognized. Beneath it, more underlined text, and their appearance and their work was, as it were, a wheel within a wheel. Biblical references to divine visitation, Elena murmured. The captain was seeing parallels between religious texts and whatever they encountered. Hale examined the navigational chart still pinned to the wall. Their last recorded position was near the Bermuda Triangle. These calculations show they encountered something the captain describes as a storm unlike any in creation. As Tom photographed the Bible, his camera captured strange prismatic effects around the pressed flower, colors that weren't visible to the naked eye. When he reviewed the images, the flower appeared to be floating slightly above the page, surrounded by minute particles of light. "There's energy here," he said, showing them the display. "Something still active after all this time." Elena gently lifted the flower. Unlike normal pressed specimens that would crumble with age, this one remained supple, its petals flexing like freshly picked blooms. A sweet, almost narcotic fragrance filled the cabin. "This isn't preservation," she whispered. "It's suspension." As if time simply stopped for everything aboard, the ship groaned around them, timbers shifting despite the absence of wind. Below deck, something heavy moved with deliberate purpose. Hale's expression transformed from academic curiosity to childlike wonder. "We need to document everything. The ship's log, the crew's quarters, cargo manifests, anything that might explain how this vessel traveled inland and why it's been preserved." As night fell, they established a base camp on the deck, none willing to leave their discovery unattended. Tom's camera equipment detected electromagnetic fluctuations increasing with the darkness. The jungle surrounding the ship fell unnaturally silent. In the stillness before dawn, Elena awoke to find the flower from the Bible had changed. Its petals now glowed with bioluminescence, pulsing in a rhythm reminiscent of a heartbeat. She watched, transfixed, as droplets of luminous nectar formed at its center, defying gravity to float upward in perfect spheres. When she reached toward one glowing droplet, it responded to her proximity, drifting toward her fingertip until contact. The moment it touched her skin, Elena gasped as vivid images flooded her consciousness. The ship at sea, engulfed in a storm comprised of light and darkness interwoven. The crew witnessing something descending from above. It holds memories, she breathed when the others woke. The flower somehow recorded what happened. The glowing bloom wilted suddenly as sunlight touched the deck, its petals darkening to ash, while the images it conveyed remained burned into Elena's mind. The lower decks of the Perseverance revealed a vessel unlike any 19th century ship documented in naval archives. Beyond the conventional quarters and storage areas lay compartments with purposes none of them could immediately identify. "This equipment," Hale said, examining brass instruments with bewildering complexity, "it's anachronistic. Far beyond 1850s technology." Elena discovered a room filled with journals and research papers. Many were written in ciphers, but others contained detailed anatomical drawings of human subjects with unusual annotations. These describe physiological adaptations to something they called temporal displacement. Tom's explorations led him to a secured storage locker. The lock, though ancient, yielded to persistent effort. Inside, nestled in velvet, lay an hourglass unlike any they had seen. The frame was platinum, etched with mathematical formulas and astronomical symbols. But most striking was the sand within. It flowed both ways simultaneously, defying gravity and logic. "I've never seen anything like this," Tom said, lifting it carefully. The sand inside responded to his touch, swirling in new patterns before resuming its impossible dual flow. "Don't," Hale began, but fell silent as the hourglass emitted a soft hum. The sand began to glow with blue-white light, matching the strange illumination they had observed around the ship. As they watched, mesmerized, the particles separated into distinct streams, forming what appeared to be a model of celestial bodies in motion. "It's a map," Elena whispered. "Not of space, but of time." Hale's hands trembled as he reached toward it. "The Chronos device. I thought it was theoretical. You know what this is?" Tom asked sharply. There were rumors in academic circles about a secret Royal Society project. Research into the nature of time itself. Hale's voice grew hushed. "I never believed it progressed beyond theoretical papers." When Elena touched the hourglass, the flowing particles reacted, coalescing into a miniature replica of the ship itself, surrounded by swirling vortices. "It's showing us what happened to them." The ship's bell tolled suddenly, though no hand had touched it. The sound resonated through the vessel with unnatural persistence. "We should go back on deck," Tom suggested, military instincts alert to the changing atmosphere. "Something doesn't feel right." They emerged to find the jungle transformed. The late afternoon light filtered through mist that hadn't been present before. In the distance, shapes moved between trees, too tall, too fluid in motion to be human. "We're not alone," Tom said. Reaching for his sidearm, Elena studied the hourglass, now pulsing in rhythm, with distant lights appearing in the jungle. "These patterns match what I saw in the flower's memories. The storm that brought them here." Hale's excitement overrode caution. "Don't you see? The ship didn't just travel through space, it traveled through time." The Chronos device was their experimental navigation tool, designed to plot courses through temporal currents. Tom's camera captured what their eyes couldn't, elongated figures watching from the tree line, their forms partially transparent. Whatever experiment they were conducting attracted attention. Attention that's still here. The hourglass sands swirled faster as darkness fell. Images formed and dissolved within its confines. The ship at sea, the approach of lights from above. Crew members transforming in ways that human bodies shouldn't move. They were studying time dilation, Hale theorized, paging through a journal. But they encountered entities that exist outside our temporal framework. Beings that perceived their experiments as an intrusion. Elena's translation of a partially burned page revealed more. The subjects in Hold 7 have begun transformation. The process appears irreversible. They no longer recognize their names or respond to commands. Their perception has altered. They see past and future simultaneously. A deep vibration shuddered through the ship. From below decks came sounds of movement, deliberate and measured. Hold 7, Tom said grimly. We haven't found that yet. The hourglass pulsed brighter, its sand now forming distinct humanoid shapes that appeared to be awakening from stillness. There's something else aboard, Elena whispered. Something that's been waiting. As if responding to her words, the hourglass sand collapsed into a single downward flow, marking time with sudden normality. The countdown had begun. They located Hold 7 behind a reinforced bulkhead door that should have succumbed to rust decades ago. Instead, the mechanisms operated with the smooth precision of regular maintenance. The door opened with a pneumatic hiss, suggesting airtight preservation. Impossible, Tom whispered, playing his flashlight across the chamber beyond. 12 glass cylinders, each 8 feet tall, lined the walls. Inside each, suspended in amber fluid, floated human figures. Men and women of various ages, dressed in simple white garments that billowed gently as if underwater. Their eyes were closed, faces serene. Cryogenic preservation in the 1850s. Elena's voice trembled. This technology didn't exist. Hale approached the nearest cylinder, wiping condensation from its surface. They appear to be breathing. Extremely slowly, but breathing. Tom's camera detected minute movement, one breath every few hours. They're alive. After all this time, between the cylinders stood a pedestal bearing what appeared to be a music box. Made of brass and crystal, its mechanism was exposed, revealing gears of impossible intricacy. A cylinder studded with microscopic pins rotated imperceptibly slowly. Lena examined the object without touching it. This isn't a music box. These notations along the side, they're measurement indicators. Microseconds, picoseconds, attoseconds, a temporal regulator, Hale breathed. It's controlling their metabolic rate relative to normal time flow. Tom photographed the device from every angle, his camera capturing prismatic effects invisible to the naked eye, a field of energy emanating from the mechanism to encompass the preservation cylinders. If we're understanding this correctly, Elena said, these people are experiencing time at perhaps 1/1,000,000th our rate. For them, only minutes have passed since 1854. Hale found a journal beside the device, its pages pristine despite the passage of time. Inside, diagrams detailed the regulator's operation, alongside profiles of the preserved subjects. He read aloud, Subject 7 exhibits most promising adaptation to temporal phasing. Consciousness remains stable when shifted 37% out of alignment with standard temporal flow. Recommending advancement to Phase 2 trials once we reach designated coordinates. The regulator's central crystal emitted a soft chime, and one set of gears advanced a fraction. In the corresponding cylinder, a female subject's finger twitched. They're not just preserved, Hale whispered. They're awakening. On a schedule. Elena translated more notes. The temporal storm damaged navigation. We drift between realities. Captain believes we've been transported outside conventional space-time. The entities continue to observe our subjects with interest. Tom studied the faces of the preserved. These aren't ordinary crew members. Look at the musculature, the cranial development. They've been altered. As if responding to his observation, the regulator's gears shifted again. This time, the movement was more pronounced. The crystal at its center pulsed with blue light, and a melody emerged. Notes so pure, they seemed to vibrate through bone rather than air. In their cylinders, all 12 subjects opened their eyes simultaneously. Elena gasped. Their eyes. They're tracking us. The eyes indeed followed their movements, though the subjects remained suspended in fluid. But something was wrong. The irises had changed color, now shimmering with the same blue luminescence as the regulator's crystal. Hale approached the pedestal reverently. "This is beyond anything I imagined." They weren't just experimenting with preservation. They were creating humans who could perceive and navigate time differently. Tom tensed as the regulator's melody intensified. "We need to leave now. We can't just—" Hale began. "Look at their faces," Tom interrupted. In their cylinders, the preserved subjects' expressions had changed. Their serene countenances now held something predatory. Their fingers began moving in unison, forming identical patterns. "They're communicating," Elena realized. "With each other or with something else." The ship groaned around them, timbers flexing. The amber fluid in the cylinders rippled with concentric patterns that defied physics, moving in geometric precision rather than natural waves. "The regulator is accelerating their temporal alignment with our present," Hale said, backing away. "They're waking up." As they retreated, the regulator's melody followed them, somehow audible throughout the ship. The last thing they saw, before sealing the bulkhead door, was the crystal at the device's center fracturing and reforming in the same instant, existing in two states simultaneously. Back on deck, the team gathered their thoughts as twilight descended. The jungle surrounding the ship had grown unnaturally still, as if holding its breath. 4 days, Tom said, checking his satellite phone for the 100th time. "No signal as expected." "We've been here 4 days, according to my log, but it doesn't feel right." Elena examined her journal entries. "My notes suggest we've only been here 2 days, but I've recorded activities that would have taken at least a week." Hale seemed less concerned with their temporal confusion than with the implications of their discovery. Those subjects were part of an experiment to create humans capable of existing outside normal time. The British government was apparently seeking a way to navigate temporal currents. While scanning the tree line, Tom noticed a glint of metal beneath a fallen log. He retrieved a tarnished officer's pocket watch. Its casing was engraved with the ship's name and the Royal Navy insignia. But it was the mechanism inside that defied explanation. The watch contained not one, but 3 separate clock faces, each tracking different measurements. One moved at normal speed, one significantly faster, and one barely moved at all. Most peculiar were the miniature celestial bodies orbiting the center axis, sun, moon, and stars in constant motion. "A chronometer," Hale identified it, voice hushed with reverence, "but modified to track multiple temporal planes simultaneously." When Tom wound the stem, the watch emitted a soft humming. The hands synchronized momentarily before resuming their disparate speeds. In that instant of alignment, the ship creaked and swayed as if at sea rather than embedded in jungle soil. "It's resonating with the ship somehow," Elena observed, steadying herself against the railing. "Like they're connected." Hale examined the chronometer closely. The tertiary dial is measuring what they called absolute time, a temporal constant that exists outside our perception. According to these readings, we're experiencing significant time dilation. Hours for us might be minutes in the outside world. Tom's military pragmatism cut through the scientific wonder. "That explains why Jose's disappearance feels like it happened yesterday, yet my log shows it was 3 days ago." A sound from below decks, melodic notes from the temporal regulator, drifted upward with increasing volume. The chronometer responded, its celestial markers accelerating their orbits. Elena clutched her head suddenly. "I can see it. I can see the ship at sea. It's like looking through 2 windows simultaneously." Tom and Hale experienced it too. Overlapping realities, flickering like double-exposed film. The jungle and ocean alternated in their perception. Sailors moved across the deck, transparent as ghosts, going about duties long completed. "The past is bleeding through," Hale whispered. "The boundaries between then and now are thinning." The chronometer's hands spun wildly as phantom sailors converged around them, unaware of the interlopers from another time. Their movements appeared jerky, accelerated beyond normal human capability. One officer passed directly through Tom, who gasped at the cold sensation. The chronometer in his hand grew ice-cold, then burning hot. "They're not ghosts," Elena realized. "We're experiencing temporal overlay. multiple time frames existing simultaneously in the same space. The phantoms vanished as suddenly as they had appeared. The chronometer's hands returned to their previous patterns, though the celestial markers now glowed with the same blue luminescence they had observed throughout the ship. "We need to understand what happened here," Hale insisted. "If time is becoming unstable around the ship, we could be in danger of becoming trapped in the same temporal bubble." Tom studied the chronometer with growing concern. "Something else worries me. If we're experiencing time differently than the outside world, how long have we actually been missing? The university might have already sent a rescue team." Elena's expression darkened. "Or maybe no time has passed at all outside. We could be experiencing months while only seconds elapse elsewhere." As darkness fell completely, the chronometer revealed one final secret. In utter blackness, faint lines of light emerged from its face, projecting what appeared to be a three-dimensional map into the air above it. Glowing pathways connected various points, the ship's journey not through oceans, but through time itself. It was never lost at sea, Hale breathed. It was lost between moments. One pathway on the projection pulsed brighter than the others, leading to a nexus point that was steadily growing larger. The chronometer's primary hand advanced toward it with ominous purpose. "Something's coming," Tom said quietly. "Or we're heading toward something." Morning arrived without transition, one moment darkness, the next brilliant sunlight. None of them remembered falling asleep, yet all three awoke simultaneously on the deck, as if time had simply skipped forward. "We need to examine one of those preserved subjects," Hale insisted over a meager breakfast of energy bars. "If we're to understand what's happening, we need direct observation." Tom opposed the idea vehemently. "Those aren't normal humans anymore. You saw their eyes, their synchronized movements. Which is precisely why we need to study them," Hale countered. Elena mediated, as she had throughout their academic careers. "Perhaps there's a middle ground." The journal mentioned Subject 7, showing the most promising adaptation. The others might be too far transformed, but 7 could still be communicative. Their debate ceased abruptly when they noticed a small wooden box that hadn't been there moments before. Roughly the size of a cigar box, its surface was covered with intricate carvings of astronomical symbols, matching those on the chronometer. "Did either of you put this here?" Tom asked, already knowing the answer. The box was sealed, not with a lock, but with a complex sliding puzzle on its lid. Elena, whose linguistic expertise extended to visual patterns, studied it carefully before manipulating the pieces. They moved with surprising fluidity for something apparently centuries old. "By those who became something more than human," Winthrop replied, glancing meaningfully toward Hold 7. "My colleagues embraced the transformation too readily. They fragmented their consciousness across multiple time streams, gaining perception beyond human limits. But in doing so, they lost their humanity. The Chronos Key's rings spun violently as the ship shuddered. In the projection, ripples appeared in the temporal currents, like stones dropped in still water. "They're waking," Winthrop whispered. The projection displayed Hold 7. The preservation fluid in the cylinders now pulsed with patterns identical to the temporal currents surrounding the ship. The subject's eyes were open, tracking something invisible. "What do they want?" Elena asked. "To break free of linear existence entirely," Winthrop said. "To remake humanity in their image, beings unconstrained by sequential time. But human minds aren't meant to perceive reality that way. The fragmentation drives you mad eventually." Hale studied the projection with growing comprehension. "The ship isn't just in a temporal nexus. It is the nexus. The experiments have made it a fixed point where multiple time streams converge." "Yes," Winthrop confirmed, his expression grave. "And when the convergence peaks tonight, the barriers between time streams will weaken further. If my former colleagues escape their containment, they'll use the Chronos technology to shatter those barriers completely." The key's projection showed the possible outcome, reality fracturing like broken glass. "Time streams bleeding into one another in chaotic patterns. We have to stop them," Tom said. No, Winthrop corrected. We have to seal them away more permanently. And to do that, we'll need help from those who have guarded this place for centuries. The jungle had transformed around the ship. Vegetation grew in impossible patterns, plants from different seasons coexisting, flowers blooming and wilting simultaneously. Some trees appeared frozen mid-growth, their branches extending in time-lapse movements visible to the naked eye. The temporal field is expanding, Winthrop explained as they ventured onto the deck. Reality is becoming increasingly unstable. Tom's military training had prepared him for many scenarios, but not for trees that existed in multiple states at once. How do we contact these guardians you mentioned? They'll find us, Winthrop assured him. They've been watching since you arrived. From his jacket pocket, Winthrop produced a small copper disc etched with intricate circular patterns. At its center sat a translucent crystal that pulsed with faint luminescence. The synchronizer. It allows communication across temporal phases. When activated, the disc emitted a low humming that seemed to bypass their ears, resonating directly within their minds. The crystal's pulsing quickened. I'm sending out a signal the Guardians will recognize, Winthrop explained. Elena studied the device with fascination. The symbols match those on the tribal artifacts we've encountered because the technology is partially derived from their knowledge, Winthrop confirmed. The Kronos Brotherhood didn't invent temporal manipulation. They rediscovered principles these indigenous people have known for generations. The synchronizer's crystal suddenly flared bright blue. From the jungle emerged tall figures. Indigenous people with ritual markings painted across their bodies in patterns matching the Kronos key's equations. Their movements had a fluid quality, as if slightly out of sync with normal time. Their leader, an elderly woman whose face bore intricate blue tattoos, approached without fear. When she spoke, Elena recognized elements of the local dialect, but altered, as if the language had evolved differently. She's speaking a version of the language that developed in an alternate time stream, Elena realized, struggling to translate. The synchronizer in Winthrop's hand pulsed in rhythm with the woman's words. Through it, they understood her meaning not in words, but in concepts transmitted directly to their consciousness. The Guardians of the Confluence, Winthrop translated unnecessarily. They've maintained the boundaries between time streams for countless generations. The tribal elder indicated the ship with a gesture of warning. The synchronizer conveyed images of the vessel in different states, first as a conventional ship, then transforming into something architectural and alien, its structure rearranging in ways that defied physical laws. The ship is metamorphosing, Hale interpreted, adapting to exist in multiple temporal phases simultaneously. Through the synchronizer, the elder shared knowledge accumulated across generations. The images showed similar vessels throughout history, in ancient Egypt, medieval China, pre-Columbian America, always appearing at temporal confluence points, always containing beings who existed between time. They're not trying to destroy or conquer, Elena realized as the synchronizer relayed the elder's understanding. They're trying to evolve humanity beyond linear time perception. Evolution requires consent, Tom countered. This feels more like invasion. The synchronizer projected the consequences of their actions, branching timelines, where humanity either continued in linear progression or fractured into a state of temporal chaos, unable to maintain the cognitive coherence necessary for civilization. Winthrop confirmed the elder's warning. The human mind isn't designed to perceive all time streams simultaneously. My colleagues believed they could force this evolution, but they didn't understand the cost. As they conversed through the synchronizer, subtle changes became apparent in their own perceptions. Colors seemed more vivid. Sounds contained harmonics previously unnoticed. Most disturbing was their awareness of movement, seeing not just where things were, but traces of where they had been, and intimations of where they would go, were being affected by the temporal field. Hale noted, both concerned and fascinated. Our perception is expanding, a temporary phenomenon, Winthrop assured them. Unless you remain here too long, The tribal elder approached Elena, studying her with ancient eyes. Through the synchronizer came understanding. Elena's linguistic abilities made her particularly susceptible to temporal perception shifts. She was already beginning to perceive language not as sequential sounds, but as complete conceptual structures existing simultaneously. "Is this how they communicate?" Elena asked, indicating the preserved subjects. "By perceiving entire concepts across time, rather than constructing meaning sequentially." "Yes," Winthrop confirmed. "But the human mind fragments under the strain. That's what happened to the others. They gained the perception, but lost the ability to remain anchored in a single moment." The synchronizer pulsed urgently as the ship groaned beneath them. The tribal elder's expression became grave. Through the device came clear warning. The temporal confluence was accelerating. Night was falling unnaturally quickly. The moon racing toward its zenith. "We're out of time," Winthrop said. The irony of his statement lost on no one. The tribal elder led them through the transformed jungle, following paths invisible to untrained eyes. Reality flickered around them, trees appearing and disappearing, terrain shifting subtly with each step. What should have been a straightforward journey became a disorienting traverse through patches of conflicting time streams. "Stay close," Winthrop cautioned. "Straying could leave you lost between moments." They reached a clearing where massive stone monoliths stood in a perfect circle, eroded by centuries yet impossibly pristine. Each stone bore markings matching the equations on the Chronos instruments. "A temporal anchor point," Hale breathed. "These stones stabilize reality around them." The elder gestured for them to enter the circle. Inside, the disorienting temporal effects diminished noticeably. She approached a stone altar at the center, removing a clay jar sealed with wax and bound with intricate knotwork. When opened, the jar revealed a substance like mercury, but with a prismatic sheen that shifted colors as it moved. The elder dipped a ritual dagger into the substance and offered it to Elena. Chronoreactive pigment, Winthrop identified it. "It exists partially outside normal time flow," Elena understood instinctively. She extended her arm, allowing the elder to paint protective symbols on her skin. The pigment felt simultaneously hot and cold, seeming to sink beneath the surface, yet remain visible. "It creates a personal temporal field," Winthrop explained, as they all received the markings. "Limited protection against the instabilities." Tom studied his marked skin with skeptical pragmatism. "Will this actually help us leave the area?" "The pigment harmonizes your personal time stream with the dominant reality," Winthrop said. "Without it, you might phase between moments, unable to maintain consistent existence." The demonstration came without warning. A butterfly fluttered past Tom, its wings beating normally until it reached the clearing's edge. There it stuttered through space, appearing in multiple positions simultaneously before disintegrating into temporal fragments. "That would be us without protection," Hale said quietly. The elder presented Hale with an object retrieved from beneath the altar, a bronze mask with no eye holes. Its surface covered with the same equations found throughout their journey. When Hale held it, the mask hummed with energy, the equations glowing with internal light. The Chronos mask, Winthrop identified it with reverence, a navigational tool for traversing temporal currents. The elder communicated through gestures that complemented broken English. "Ship becoming anchor, breaking. Walls between times. Mask shows. Safe path out." Hale examined the artifact carefully. There appear to be internal lenses aligned with where the eyes would be, but facing inward rather than outward. "It doesn't show what's physically before you," Winthrop explained. "It reveals temporal currents invisible to normal perception. When worn, you see pathways through the chaos. A distant explosion rocked the jungle, concussive force rippling through multiple temporal phases at once. Trees fell in slow motion while others instantaneously aged to dust. The containment systems in Hold 7, Winthrop realized. "They're breaking free." The elder urgently gestured toward a path leading away from the ship. They needed to depart immediately. Tom took the mask from Hale. "I have navigation training. I'll lead us out." "It wasn't designed for untrained minds," Winthrop warned. "We don't have time for training," Tom countered. Placing the mask against his face, the bronze adhered to his skin as if magnetized. Tom gasped, staggering as his perception transformed. The others watched with concern as he stood frozen, head turning in tiny increments as he processed information beyond normal human perception. "Pathways," he finally said, voice strained. "I can see them, ribbons of stability through chaos. But they're shifting constantly." The elder nodded, unsurprised. The temporal confluence was accelerating. Stable paths would become increasingly rare. "We need to move now," Tom insisted, lowering the mask momentarily. The effort of using it had left him pale and sweating. "There's a route that leads toward the river, but it's narrowing." Another explosion rocked the ship in the distance. This one triggered visible distortions in the air, reality rippling like heat waves above hot asphalt. But with colors that shouldn't exist in nature, Tom replaced the mask and led them out of the stone circle. Following him required absolute trust, as he navigated a seemingly random path through the jungle, often directing them to step precisely in his footprints or freeze motionless for heart-stopping moments as temporal waves. Past, Elena noticed with growing alarm that the protective pigment on their skin was fading, the prismatic sheen diminishing with each temporal disturbance they encountered. Halfway to the river, Tom stopped abruptly. The path ahead just vanished. Through the mask, he saw all routes forward collapsing, stable time streams folding into chaos. Behind them, the path they'd traveled had already dissolved. "We're cut off," he realized, trapped between collapsed temporal pathways. They huddled in the small bubble of relative stability maintained by their fading protective markings. The jungle around them cycled through seasons in minutes, leaves budding, flourishing, withering, and regenerating in continuous loops. "The pigment won't last much longer," Winthrop warned, examining the fading symbols on his arm. "When it fails, we'll experience temporal drift, our consciousness unable to maintain continuity." The tribal elder closed her eyes in concentration, hands moving in precise patterns that mimicked the flow of the temporal currents. From the undergrowth emerged more of her people, warriors with the same blue markings, moving with the unnatural fluidity they'd observed before. "They've been following us," Tom realized, removing the mask to rest his strained mind. The elder reached into a pouch and produced what appeared to be a small wooden orb, roughly the size of a baseball. Its surface was composed of interlocking segments that shifted positions of their own accord, like a self-solving puzzle box. At its center, visible through small gaps between the wooden pieces, glowed something crystalline. The confluence sphere. Winthrop identified it with evident surprise. "I've only seen references to it in the Brotherhood's oldest texts. When the elder placed the sphere on the ground, it immediately oriented itself to invisible forces, several segments extending outward like antennae. The crystalline center pulsed with increasing frequency, emitting harmonic tones that seemed to stabilize the air around them. It's creating a temporal bubble," Hale observed, harmonizing the conflicting time streams locally. The elder spoke to Elena in her fractured dialect, which Eleanor now understood with increasing clarity as her perception continued to shift. "She says the sphere can temporarily stabilize a path back to the ship," Elena translated. "But once there, we must complete a ritual to seal the temporal breach." Tom frowned. "We were trying to escape the ship, not return to it. The breach must be sealed at its source," Winthrop explained. "The ship has become a focal point for the temporal confluence. If we don't stabilize it, the effects will eventually spread beyond this region." "How far?" Hale asked. "Globally," Winthrop said grimly. "Reality itself would become unstable as time streams bleed together." The elder manipulated the confluence sphere, its segments rearranging into new configurations. With each change, the surrounding jungle stabilized further, temporal anomalies receding from their immediate vicinity. "The sphere is synchronizing discordant time streams," Winthrop explained, creating a harmonized present from conflicting realities. Through Eleanor's enhanced perception, she understood the Elder's explanation of the artifact's history. The sphere had been created centuries ago, when the first temporal vessel appeared in the region. The tribe's ancestors had learned to harness the same energies that powered the Chronos technology, but with a crucial difference. "They don't seek to manipulate time," Elena translated. "They work in harmony with it, maintaining balance rather than forcing change." The confluence sphere's segments aligned into a perfect pattern, and a clear path shimmered into existence, a corridor of stabilized reality leading back toward the ship. The Elder indicated they must follow it immediately. As they proceeded, Elena continued translating the knowledge being shared. The tribe calls the preserved subjects the fragmented ones. They believe consciousness naturally exists across all moments simultaneously, but remains focused in the present through biological limitation, a protective constraint, Hale mused. Like how our eyes filter out most electromagnetic radiation. The Chronos Brotherhood attempted to remove those constraints, Winthrop confirmed, to give humans perception beyond linear time. But they didn't understand the consequences. The jungle thinned as they approached the ship once more. The vessel had transformed further, its wooden hull now rippling with metallic properties, sails deployed despite being embedded in earth. Most disturbing was its partial transparency, as if it existed in multiple states simultaneously. The subjects are using the ship itself as a temporal amplifier, Winthrop realized. Oh, they're trying to shatter the boundaries permanently. The Elder placed the confluence sphere in Elena's hands. Through their enhanced connection, Elena understood its purpose. The sphere could counteract the temporal manipulations by harmonizing rather than separating time streams. "We need to place it at the ship's center," Elena explained. "Where the temporal energies converge." Tom studied the transformed vessel with military assessment. "Getting aboard won't be easy. The subjects will defend their work." The Elder spoke again, her message clear even without translation. The tribe would help them reach the focal point, but the final task, the stabilization ritual, would require someone intimately familiar with both the Chronos technology and the indigenous knowledge. All eyes turned to Elena, whose understanding of both language and temporal perception had evolved most rapidly. "I can't," she began. "You already are," Winthrop said gently. "Your linguistic abilities have allowed your mind to adapt to temporal perception without fragmenting. You're bridging worlds even now." The confluence sphere pulsed in her hands, responding to her thoughts before she consciously formed them. Night had fallen completely, the moon racing unnaturally fast toward its zenith. The transformed ship pulsed with blue energy that arced between masts and rigging like electrical current, illuminating the clearing with an eerie glow. "The temporal concentration is increasing," Winthrop observed. "When the moon reaches its peak position, the confluence will maximize." The tribal warriors prepared for battle, applying fresh protective markings and readying weapons tipped with the same chrono-reactive material that protected their skin. Their movements were practiced, generations of guardianship evident in their quiet efficiency. Hale had grown increasingly quiet, his scientific curiosity evolving into something more intense. While the others planned their approach, he separated himself, examining something he'd concealed in his pack. Tom noticed first. "What have you got there?" Reluctantly, Hale revealed a small metallic cylinder engraved with the now familiar Chronos equations. Its surface rippled like liquid despite being solid, one end narrowing to a point while the other featured a recessed button. "The temporal syringe," Winthrop identified it, eyes widening. "Where did you find that?" "In the captain's quarters," Hale admitted. "Hidden in a secret compartment, the device pulsed in rhythm with the ship's energies, the liquid metal of its construction seeming to respond to the temporal disturbances around them. It contains concentrated chronoparticles," Winthrop explained to the others. The Brotherhood used it to inoculate subjects before full temporal exposure. It was the first step in the transformation process. Tom's expression hardened. You were planning to use it on yourself. Hale didn't deny it. I've spent my entire career searching for proof of temporal manipulation. Here it is, not just proof, but the technology itself. The ability to perceive beyond our limited three-dimensional existence. At what cost? Elena challenged. Look at what happened to the others. They went too far, too fast, Hale countered. A controlled exposure could expand perception without causing fragmentation. Winthrop shook his head. Assistidi dastiptidia. That's what we all believed. Each of us thought we could control it, maintain our humanity while transcending its limitations. We were wrong. The confrontation paused as a massive temporal wave emanated from the ship, rippling through the jungle. Trees aged decades in seconds before rejuvenating. Animals appeared and vanished. Geological features shifted subtly. We're running out of time, Tom insisted. The tribal elder approached Hale, her ancient eyes seeing beyond his academic justifications. She spoke softly, Elena translating. She says your desire for knowledge is natural, but some barriers exist for our protection. Human minds evolved to perceive time linearly, because the alternative leads to madness. Hale clutched the temporal syringe tighter. But what if we could adapt, evolve beyond those limitations? That evolution would take thousands of generations, Winthrop said. The Brotherhood tried to force it in a single lifetime. The results are those beings in Hold 7, brilliant minds shattered across multiple time streams, unable to maintain coherent identity. Tom stepped forward, hand extended. Give me the syringe, Dr. Hale. A tense moment passed before Hale reluctantly surrendered the device. You don't understand what we're giving up. The knowledge, the perception. I understand exactly what we're giving up, Tom interrupted. And what we're saving. The tribal warriors had created a perimeter, using their chants and movements to stabilize a path to the ship. The confluent sphere in Elena's hands pulsed stronger as they approached, responding to the increasing temporal energies. As they prepared to move, Winthrop pulled Elena aside. There's something you should know about Dr. Hale. His interest in this expedition wasn't purely academic. What do you mean? His neural patterns, Winthrop explained. When I examined him through the temporal lens, I saw fragmentation already beginning. He's in the early stages of temporal perception shift. That's impossible, Elena objected. He hasn't been exposed to the Chronos technology long enough, unless he had prior exposure, Winthrop countered. The Brotherhood didn't end with our expedition. It continued in secret for generations. The realization dawned on Elena. You're saying Hale is part of the modern Brotherhood, that this entire expedition was planned. I believe he's been experiencing temporal slippage for years, Winthrop confirmed. His theories about temporal anomalies weren't theoretical at all. They were based on his own perceptual experiences. Their conversation was interrupted as another, stronger wave emanated from the ship. The protective markings on their skin flared briefly before fading further. We need to move now, Tom urged. As they advanced toward the ship, Eleanor watched Hale with new understanding. His movements had the same subtle fluidity she'd observed in the tribal guardians, someone whose perception was no longer entirely bound by linear time. And despite having surrendered the temporal syringe, his expression held not disappointment, but anticipation. The approach to the ship proved more challenging than anticipated. Temporal disturbances intensified with each step, reality flickering between states. Only the tribal warriors' chants and the stabilizing influence of the confluent sphere made progress possible. Something's wrong, Tom said suddenly, counting heads. Where's Hale? They turned to find the archaeologist had vanished. Moments later, they spotted him sprinting toward the ship along a different path, moving with impossible speed and precision through temporal fluctuations that should have torn him apart. He's using the disruptions, Winthrop realized. His partial perception shift allows him to navigate them. Before they could pursue, Hale reached the ship and disappeared inside. Almost immediately, the temporal disturbances intensified. Waves rippling outward with increased frequency. "He's activating something," Elena said, the confluence sphere in her hands pulsing erratically in response. The tribal elder led them to an alternate approach, a narrow path of relative stability circling behind the ship. As they advanced, she retrieved an object from her ceremonial pouch and presented it to Tom. It was a small, pyramidal crystal, amber in color, mounted in a bronze setting. Despite its ancient appearance, the crystal contained what looked like modern circuitry suspended within its structure. The resonance prism, Winthrop identified it, a communication device that works across temporal phases. The elder demonstrated its use, pressing it to her temple briefly. Immediately, they all received a clear mental impression, memories that weren't their own, showing 3 crew members from the original expedition escaping the ship during its transformation. Some of the crew survived, Elena realized. They integrated with the tribe, passing down knowledge of what happened. The memories continued, showing generations of guardianship, rituals maintaining temporal boundaries around the ship, and periodic attempts by outsiders to access the vessel, all thwarted until now. "The Brotherhood has been trying to reclaim the ship for generations," Winthrop confirmed. Hale finally succeeded where others failed. Tom activated the resonance prism himself, receiving tactical information directly from the tribal warriors, the ship's layout as it had transformed over time, where temporal barriers were weakest, and most importantly, the location of the focal point where the ritual needed to be performed. "The captain's quarters have transformed into some kind of control center," Tom relayed. "That's where Hale will be heading." Elena received different information through the prism, detailed instructions for the stabilization ritual and warnings about what they would face. "Inside, the subjects aren't just awake," she translated grimly. "They're merging with the ship itself, becoming a single entity that exists across multiple time streams." Winthrop nodded. The final stage of transformation, transcending physical form entirely. They reached a breach in the hull where wood had transformed into something resembling liquid metal, frozen in mid-flow. Inside, the ship's interior had changed dramatically. Corridors twisted in non-Euclidean geometry. Rooms existed in multiple states simultaneously, and gravity seemed optional rather than mandatory. Using the resonance prism to maintain their bearings, they navigated the impossible architecture. Glimpses of the ship's past and potential futures flickered around them. The vessel at sea, then as a floating structure in void-like space, then as something architectural and alien. "We're seeing all its potential states," Winthrop explained. "All possibilities existing simultaneously." They encountered no resistance until they neared Hold 7. The door had transformed into a membrane-like surface that rippled with temporal energies. Beyond it, shadowy figures moved with that same disturbing fluidity they'd observed before, not quite human in their movements. Tom checked the crude weapons provided by the tribal warriors, spears tipped with chrono-reactive material. "These can temporarily disrupt their temporal field. Aim for the center mass." Elena clutched the confluence sphere tighter. "And if we can't reach the control center?" The membrane-like door pulsed, bulging outward as something pressed against it from the other side. The preserved subjects were no longer contained. "Ready?" Tom asked, grip tightening on his weapon. Elena nodded, the confluence sphere humming with increasing intensity in her hands. Behind them, the ship's timbers groaned as reality itself bent under the strain of conflicting time streams. The membrane-like door shattered outward, crystallizing mid-air into temporal fragments that hung suspended. Through the opening emerged what had once been human, the preserved subjects now transformed into beings that existed partially out of phase with normal reality. Their movements left trailing afterimages, bodies semi-transparent in places, fully solid in others. Tom reacted first, thrusting his chrono-reactive spear toward the nearest entity. The weapon passed through the being's chest, momentarily forcing all its temporal aspects to align. It shrieked in harmonics that vibrated through bone rather than air. "Go!" Tom shouted to Elena and Winthrop. "Get to the control center. I'll hold them here with the warriors." The tribal guardians formed a defensive perimeter, their movements synchronized with practiced precision. For generations, they had prepared for this moment. Elena and Winthrop navigated deeper into the ship, the confluent sphere guiding them through corridors that defied conventional geometry. Walls curved inward at impossible angles. Floors occasionally became ceilings, and doorways led to spaces larger than the rooms containing them. "The ship is becoming a tesseract," Winthrop explained. "A four-dimensional structure manifesting in three-dimensional space." They reached what had once been the captain's quarters. The space had transformed into a vast chamber filled with crystalline structures that resembled neural networks, pulsing with energy that flowed between nodes. At the center stood Dr. Hale, manipulating a device that seemed to be growing from the floor itself. The temporal resonator. Winthrop identified it with hushed reverence. Unlike the other Chronos artifacts, the resonator appeared to be alive, a crystalline structure growing and shifting like a living organism. "It's not just a device," Elena realized. "It's an interface between dimensions." Hale turned, his movements now possessing that same disturbing fluidity they'd observed in the transformed subjects. His eyes had changed, irises expanded to eliminate the whites entirely, pupils reflecting the same blue luminescence as the Chronos technology. "You're too late," he said, his voice overlapping with itself, as if speaking from multiple moments simultaneously. "The transformation has begun," the resonator pulsed, sending ripples through reality that made Elena's vision blur. Through her enhanced perception, she could see what Hale had become, a being existing across multiple time streams, his consciousness fragmented yet somehow unified. "The barriers are dissolving," Hale continued, gesturing to holographic displays that appeared and disappeared around him. "Soon all humans will perceive as we do, beyond the limitations of linear time." "You'll destroy humanity," Winthrop countered. "Most minds can't handle that kind of perception. They'll fragment completely. Those who survive will evolve," Hale replied. "The weak must make way for what comes next." Elena clutched the confluent sphere tightly as she circled the chamber, searching for the focal point identified through the resonance prism. The sphere pulsed stronger as she approached a particular crystalline node. "This wasn't the Brotherhood's original intent," Winthrop argued, keeping Hale's attention. "We sought understanding, not forced evolution at any cost. The original Brotherhood was limited by the morality of its time," Hale dismissed. "We've moved beyond such constraints." As they spoke, Eleanor reached the focal point. According to the ritual knowledge transferred through the resonance prism, this was where all temporal currents converged, the perfect position to deploy the confluence sphere. She began the ritual, her enhanced linguistic abilities allowing her to pronounce sounds that human vocal cords weren't designed to produce. The sphere responded, its segments realigning into new configurations as it rose from her hands, hovering in the air. Hale sensed the disruption immediately. "Stop her!" The temporal resonator pulsed violently, sending a focused wave of energy toward Elena. Winthrop intercepted it, his body momentarily dispersing into temporal fragments before reforming. "Finish it!" he gasped. Elena continued the ritual, the confluent sphere now spinning rapidly, emitting harmonics that countered the resonator's frequencies. The two technologies, one designed to fracture time, the other to harmonize it, battled for dominance. Hale reached toward the resonator, merging his transformed consciousness with the device. "You can't stop evolution." The chamber shuddered as reality itself bent under the strain of conflicting forces. Through the walls, they could see multiple versions of the ship existing simultaneously, past, present, and potential futures overlapping. In that moment of maximum temporal stress, Tom burst into the chamber, followed by the tribal elder. Both were injured but determined. "The subjects are coming," Tom warned. "We're out of time." The elder approached Elena, adding her ancient knowledge to the ritual. Together, they spoke words that resonated with the fundamental frequencies of reality itself. The confluence sphere expanded, creating a field that began to stabilize the chaotic temporal energies. But the resonator fought back, Hale's consciousness amplifying its power. It's not strong enough, Elena realized. The confluence is too powerful. The elder's expression was grave as she communicated a final option, the temporal loop they had discussed earlier. Someone would need to maintain the loop from inside it, eternally vigilant, forever trapped. Reality fractured around them as the temporal resonator and confluence sphere battled for dominance. The ship's structure began to dissolve, walls becoming transparent, showing glimpses of other times and places. The vessel at sea during a storm, the same ship floating in void-like space. Architectural configurations that defied human understanding. We need something more powerful, Elena realized. Maintaining the ritual despite the chaos, the tribal elder reached into her ceremonial pouch one final time, producing an object that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. A small obsidian pyramid, its surface etched with symbols more ancient than any they had encountered. At its apex sat a depression, the exact size and shape of the confluence sphere. The anchor stone, Winthrop identified it, voice hushed with awe. I thought it was just a myth. What does it do? Tom asked, defending against temporal fragments that had once been the preserved subjects. It can bind the ship to a single point in space-time, Winthrop explained. But the cost? The elder's expression confirmed the gravity of its use. Through their enhanced connection, Elena understood. The anchor stone required a conscious mind to power it. A soul willing to become the permanent linchpin between time streams. As they hesitated, Hale and the resonator grew stronger. The transformed archaeologist was merging further with the device, his physical form becoming increasingly abstract, less human, more a collection of temporal energy patterns, maintaining a humanoid shape through sheer will. The barriers are nearly gone, Hale announced, his voice echoing from multiple points in time simultaneously. Soon, all of humanity will see beyond the veil of linear perception. Through the dissolving walls, they glimpse the outside world. The temporal disturbances were spreading beyond the jungle, rippling outward in concentric waves that distorted reality wherever they touched. In the distance, a small town flickered between states, buildings aging decades in seconds. People frozen mid-motion as their time streams desynchronized. We're out of options, Tom said grimly. The elder placed the anchor stone on the floor at the chamber's center. Elena understood what she must do, position the confluence sphere in the depression at the pyramid's apex, completing the connection between technologies. I'll do it, Elena said, knowing what this meant. They'll maintain the anchor. No, Winthrop countered. This was my brotherhood's mistake. The responsibility is mine. Before either could act, the transformed subjects breached the chamber, moving in that disturbing fluid manner, existing partially out of phase with normal reality. Tom engaged them with his chrono-reactive spear, but he was outnumbered and tiring. Reality continued to fracture. Through the gaps appeared impossible vistas, landscapes from Earth's distant past and potential futures, alien worlds that might exist in alternate timelines. Void spaces where reality itself seemed unformed. We're losing cohesion, Winthrop warned. If we don't act now, the fractures will become permanent. Elena prepared to place the confluence sphere into the anchor stone, but Hale sensed her intent. His transformed consciousness reached out, manipulating temporal currents to hold her immobile. You can't stop evolution, he insisted. This is humanity's destiny. Not like this, Elena countered, fighting his influence. Not forced upon those who can't survive it. The temporal resonator pulsed violently, sending waves of energy that further distorted reality. The ship's structure began to fold in on itself, creating a recursive loop of spaces that contained themselves. Tom fought his way to Elena's side. Whatever you're going to do it now." The elder began a chant, her ancient knowledge channeling through vocal patterns that resonated with the fundamental frequencies of reality. The anchor stone responded, its obsidian surface glowing with inner light that somehow remained utterly black. Winthrop seized the moment of distraction to break away from the battle. He approached Hale directly, his expression resolute. "Marcus," he said, using Hale's first name to reach whatever humanity remained. "This isn't what we sought. We wanted understanding, not destruction." Hale hesitated, some flicker of recognition passing through his transformed consciousness. In that moment of uncertainty, Winthrop lunged forward, embracing his transformed colleague. Their temporal fields interacted, creating a cascade effect that momentarily disrupted Hale's connection to the resonator. "Now!" Winthrop shouted to Eleanor. She broke free of the temporal hold, rushing toward the anchor stone with the confluence sphere. As she prepared to complete the connection, time seemed to slow around her. In that stretched moment, she saw everything with perfect clarity. The multiple potential outcomes branching from this single point of decision, the consequences of each choice rippling outward through time. And in that clarity, she realized there was another option they hadn't considered. Time fractured around Elena as she held the confluence sphere above the anchor stone. In that stretched moment between heartbeats, her enhanced perception revealed connections previously hidden. The resonator and sphere were not opposing technologies, but complementary halves of a single system. Designed to balance rather than dominate, they were never meant to work separately, she realized. The chamber shuddered as reality strained under temporal pressures. Through dissolving walls, they glimpsed the transformed subjects merging with the ship's structure, their consciousnesses fragmenting across multiple time streams. Winthrop still grappled with Hale, their temporal fields interacting chaotically. "I can't hold him much longer." From the floor where it had fallen during the struggle, a small silver disc rolled to Elena's feet, approximately the size of a pocket watch, but impossibly thin. Its surface bore concentric circles of microscopic writing in languages both human and distinctly not. "The Harmony Disc," the tribal elder identified it, her voice cutting through temporal distortion. Elena instinctively understood. This was the missing piece, the mediator between opposing forces. Ancient indigenous knowledge had preserved what the Brotherhood had forgotten. Balance required both forces working in concert. She placed the confluence sphere into the anchor stone's depression, then positioned the harmony disk between them, like a lens focusing scattered light. The effect was immediate, the sphere's harmonizing energies channeled through the disk in a concentrated beam that struck the temporal resonator. Hale screamed as the connection formed, his partially merged consciousness caught in the energy transfer. The resonator pulsed violently, fighting the imposed harmony, but the technologies recognized their counterparts across centuries of separation. They're synchronizing, Winthrop observed in wonder. The harmony disk rotated of its own accord, its microscopic writings glowing with inner light as it translated between technological languages separated by centuries. The confluence sphere's segments realigned to match the resonator's frequency while maintaining its harmonizing function. "It's not enough," the elder warned. "The connection requires consciousness to stabilize it permanently." Elena understood. Someone still needed to sacrifice themselves, becoming the living bridge between technologies. But now, instead of being trapped in a temporal loop, they would become something else entirely. A consciousness existing across all relevant time streams simultaneously, maintaining balance through eternal vigilance. Tom fought his way to Elena's side. "Let me do it. I've got the lease to return to." "No," Winthrop countered. "This began with my Brotherhood. It should end with me." Hale, still partially merged with the resonator, laughed bitterly. "You still don't understand. None of you can maintain the bridge alone. The human mind isn't capable of that level of fragmentation without losing coherence. Through the harmony disk, Elena received understanding that transcended words. images of three consciousness patterns merging to create a stable matrix, strong enough to maintain temporal balance indefinitely. It needs three of us, she translated. A trinity of consciousness, past, present, and potential. Winthrop represented the past, the original brotherhood, and their responsibility for creating the temporal breach. Hale embodied the present crisis, his transformation and ambition creating the immediate danger. But who would represent the potential future? The answer came as the tribal elder stepped forward, her ancient eyes reflecting wisdom beyond her years. I have prepared for this moment through many lifetimes. The harmony disc pulsed in confirmation. These three, scientist, archaeologist, and guardian, formed the necessary triangle of perspective needed to maintain eternal balance. No, Tom objected. There must be another way. But Elena understood there wasn't. The temporal fractures had progressed too far, reality itself beginning to unravel around them. Only this sacrifice could restore stability. Winthrop approached the connection point, his expression serene. I've lived between moments since 1854. Perhaps this is what I was preserved for. Hale struggled against his fate, but the transformed parts of his consciousness recognized the necessity. I wanted to transcend human limitations, not become a cosmic maintenance worker. The elder simply nodded, accepting her role in the eternal trinity. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of generations of guardianship. Some burdens must be carried for the many. As the three positioned themselves around the connected artifacts, the harmony disc expanded, creating a field that encompassed them. Their physical forms began to dissolve, consciousness patterns visible as intricate webs of light merging with the technologies. Get to the stone circle, Winthrop told Elena and Tom. It will shield you from the temporal reset. Elena wanted to object, to find another solution, but her enhanced perception showed the truth. This was the only path that restored balance without destroying what made humanity human. Go, Hale ordered, a final moment of clarity cutting through his transformed consciousness. As they fled the chamber, reality itself began to re-knit around them. The ship groaned, its structure shifting back toward conventional geometry as temporal currents realigned into harmonious patterns. Behind them, three consciousnesses merged with ancient and modern technology, becoming something beyond human, eternal guardians of the boundaries between moments. 3 months later, Elena stood at the edge of the university's archaeological repository, watching rain trace patterns down the windows. The temporal realignment had reset reality with remarkable precision. To the outside world, they had been gone exactly 2 weeks, returning with extensive documentation of an indigenous settlement, but no evidence of a mysterious ship. Only Elena and Tom remembered the truth. The carbon dating results came back, Tom said, joining her with a folder of reports. The artifacts we brought back date consistently to the mid-1800s, exactly matching the Perseverance's disappearance. Elena nodded. The university considered their expedition a modest success, interesting cultural findings, but nothing revolutionary. Their video footage showed only jungle, tribal interactions, and conventional archaeological work. No ship, no temporal anomalies, no transformed beings. The memory alterations were thorough, she remarked. Even Jose remembers guiding us the entire time. Not alterations, Tom corrected. More like... Reality chose the version where things made sense. From her desk drawer, Eleanor removed the one object that shouldn't exist, a small leather-bound journal with no markings. When opened, its pages appeared blank to anyone but her and Tom. To them, intricate diagrams and text in multiple languages documented everything they had experienced. The memory codex, Tom identified it. It appeared in my pack the day we returned. Identical to yours. The journal defied conventional physics. Pages could be added simply by thinking of questions, information appearing as if written by invisible hands. It contained detailed accounts of the Kronos Brotherhood throughout history, The nature of temporal physics beyond current scientific understanding, and the continuing work of the Trinity of Guardians now maintaining the boundaries between time streams. "I've been translating the sections about other vessels," Elena said, turning to pages showing coordinates around the world. "There are 7 more ships like the Perseverance, each at a temporal confluence point." Tom studied the locations: the Bermuda Triangle, the Devil's Sea near Japan, a point deep in the Gobi Desert, and others scattered across the globe at seemingly random intervals, all safely contained, he noted. Thanks to them, the journal occasionally updated itself with messages from the consciousness that had once been Winthrop, Hale, and the tribal elder. These communications were never direct, more impressions and concepts than words, but conveyed that the Trinity remained vigilant, existing beyond conventional time to maintain the barriers between realities. "Do you ever think about what Hale wanted?" Elena asked. "Human evolution beyond linear perception?" Tom considered this carefully. "I think about the cost. What we saw in those transformed subjects, the fragmentation, the loss of humanity. But we're different now," Elena pointed out. "Our perception has been permanently altered. We see patterns others don't, connections invisible to conventional awareness." It was true. Their exposure to the temporal phenomena had changed them subtly but permanently. Elena's linguistic abilities had expanded beyond conventional language to include patterns in natural systems. Tom's strategic thinking now incorporated temporal variables invisible to others, making him unnervingly prescient in crisis situations. "Gradual evolution, not forced transformation," Tom concluded. Maybe that was always the point. Elena turned to the journal's final pages, where a star chart had appeared overnight. Constellations she didn't recognize surrounded a central point marked with symbols matching those on the Harmony disk. "They're showing us something new," she said. I think the ships weren't just experiments in temporal physics. They were preparation for something larger." Tom studied the chart with growing comprehension. "Not just temporal confluences, cosmic ones." The memory codex vibrated slightly in Elena's hands, pages turning of their own accord to reveal new information, mathematical formulas describing intersection points between not just time streams but dimensional boundaries. The Brotherhood was short-sighted, Elena realized. They thought they were pioneering temporal manipulation, but they were rediscovering ancient knowledge about something far more significant. The journal's final page now held a simple message in handwriting that somehow combined Winthrop's precise script, Hale's bold strokes, and the tribal elders' flowing symbols, the boundaries thin again in 7 years. "We cannot maintain them alone when the cosmic confluence occurs. Prepare as we did not." Elena closed the journal, its contents already burning in her mind with undeniable purpose. They sacrificed themselves to buy us time, to give humanity a chance to evolve gradually, naturally. Tom nodded, the weight of responsibility settling on both their shoulders. "So we prepare." Outside, the rain continued, each droplet containing reflections of possibilities, the countless paths forward from this moment of decision. The memory codex hummed with potential, a repository of knowledge waiting to guide humanity toward a future where evolution came not through forced transformation, but through understanding and balance.